Superman saved cinema. Now I get it, that's a big claim. But I don't think that it can or should be understated how much 1978 Superman successfully achieved. Because 1978 Superman the movie is more than just a classic Hollywood movie. When it comes to the popularity of superheroes today, when it comes to their credibility among mainstream adult audiences, when it comes to the sheer quality that we get from comic book movies today, it can all be linked back to Richard Donner's Superman the movie. Here's how. Imagine a world where there are no superhero movies. There's no Marvel Cinematic Universe, there's no Spider-Man, no Avengers, no Dark Knight. Your beloved icons from the world of comic books are simply just little cartoon strips for children. Now I know what some of you are thinking. Gosh, that sounds like a better world altogether. Now look buddy, I am aware that you've been to film school. I'm aware that your inbox is flooded with emails from Quentin Tarantino telling you all about how your tenacity in the face of the mainstream has single-handedly revolutionized the auteuristic vision as the predominant form of entertainment in the world. How your opinion has single-handedly revitalized the medium of kino. But I'm not the kind of guy that's gonna have that conversation with you. I would dare to say that superhero movies have brought us some of the best films that I have ever seen, and that I, as an audience member, owe a lot of that to 1978 Superman. Let's take a modern-day example of a brilliant comic book movie. 2008's The Dark Knight, the sequel to Christopher Nolan's complete reinvention of the Batman universe. The crown jewel of a film series that completely grounded the Batman universe in reality and practicality. A film with messages, themes, and philosophies that are relevant to even the real world. Everything that is synonymous and intrinsic to Batman has been properly thought through with real-world justification and application. The characters were reimagined from the ground up to serve a narrative that had something on its mind. This wasn't just thrills for the sake of thrills, it wasn't just action for the sake of action. And as groundbreaking as The Dark Knight is commonly regarded, this was not the first time this approach was taken with a comic book movie, as The Dark Knight follows a superhero movie template that was set in stone by Richard Donner's Superman 1978. There tends to be a little bit of an attitude surrounding Superman that he is merely the product of a bygone era, that Superman, this symbol of virtue. The world is too cynical today for a film like Superman. While you could have a big Boy Scout flying around in spandex back then, today you need justification, and nothing could justify a big blue square like Superman in today's cynical world. Now, admittedly, some pretty interesting takes on Superman have emerged from that mindset in recent years. But the truth be told, the mindset was more or less exactly the same in 1978. Superman has always been the kind of character that's had a lot to prove. In pre-Crisis Superman comics prior to the movie's release, Superman was merely a power fantasy, and that is something that everybody could relate to. Superman comics were the thrill of watching stakes ramp up high, watching lives be at risk, and watching this character that exists literally only to save the day with a grab bag of superpowers appropriate for any occasion, swoop in and save the day. And those thrills combined with the iconography of Superman brought us this legend so ingrained in the public consciousness that a Superman movie had a lot to prove. Can you make a good movie out of this character? Of course, 1978 Superman was not the first time we would see superheroes on the big screen in a big event status movie, as 1966 had brought us Batman the movie, which I think is a great example of a pre-Superman superhero movie. Listen, I love Batman 66, but it is ultimately a movie made to tie in with an immensely popular sitcom TV series at the time. It's a film that existed to capitalize on a popular trend, and that is it. It gives you everything you would expect at the time. Some superheroes team up, and Batman and Robin stop them in hilarious fashion, in all kinds of wacky ways which really test your suspension of disbelief. But with Superman, we're not just talking about a guy that has gadgets and shark repellent and a fancy car, we're literally talking about a man that can fly. And as the film's advertising tagline said, you'll believe a man can fly. So, How does a 1978 released Superman movie make us believe a man can fly? How is a cynical human audience supposed to believe in Superman? Superman 1978 begins by setting the terms at which the audience are viewing this movie. It begins with the narration from a child who is opening an Action Comics comic book. How appropriate that the first serious superhero movie should begin with the opening of a comic book. That's just aged like fine wine. But it does tell us that what we are watching is indeed fantasy. We then enter the justification. This is an origin story. This is how we learn who Superman is and why Superman is how he is. For the mainstream adult audience, this will have been their first introduction to a superhero on the big screen, so they needed to get that origin story in there to explain why a superhero is the way it is. Because even in 1978, audiences needed to be able to relate this character to the real world. What is intrinsic to Superman, his power, his costume, his virtue, is all given justification, rhyme and reason during the first act of the film on Krypton, where we find out where Superman comes from. His father, Jor-El, was a man of justice, a man that wanted to save his world, surrounded by people that simply didn't believe in him. And so he sends his son Kal-El to Earth so that he can survive. During these scenes, we have explanation about how Earth's atmosphere differs from Krypton, allowing Superman to be strong, allowing him to defy Earth's weaker gravity. We have the baby Kal-El traveling across the galaxy for much of his childhood as he's growing up, listening to recordings of his father Jor-El and his philosophies. The blanket he had as a child is in the iconic Superman color scheme. This tells us everything we need to know about why Superman is who he is. It justifies it. It grounds it in a way that adults can view it with a sense of credibility. But of course, all of that effort would amount to nothing if it weren't for Superman being convincing. Just because we can believe in the reason why a man can fly, that doesn't mean we're going to believe a man can fly when we see it. But fortunately for 1978 Superman, the effects were astonishing, and if I'm being completely honest, they do hold up today. I will be honest, this is the Superman movie where I do still most believe a man can fly. No, it doesn't have the massive amounts of Hollywood polish that a film like Man of Steel does. There's no CGI flight sequences, there's no massive sonic booms whenever he flies. What we have here is a man on strings being pulled around different sets and projections, but ultimately, what you're seeing is a man flying in there. He's real. He's flying and it feels like you can reach out and touch him. Another stroke of genius was the casting of Christopher Reeve. At the time of Superman's release, Christopher Reeve was not a known actor, which meant that when you looked at him in this movie, you could only see Superman. You didn't see that celebrity you know from another film. You didn't see that big name personality. You saw Superman. Team that up with an immediately recognizable costume, and then what you have there is unmistakably Superman. Not to mention that John Williams' Superman theme and score for this movie would go on to become a quintessential superhero theme that many still remember today. So they got the rhyme and reason right, and they got Superman right, but what's next? Are we just gonna have a bunch of over-the-top scenarios and this walking Deus Ex Machina comes to save the day? Superman addresses the matter of cynicism by allowing it to have a voice at the hypothetical table. No, people in Metropolis do not believe Superman exists. People even go so far as to scoff at the idea. But the best part of this theme is Superman's relationship with Lois Lane. Sure, she knows Superman exists, she was saved by him, but she doesn't believe in the beacon of virtue that he is. And that's where Superman the movie really understands the character of Superman. He embodies truth, justice, and the American way, and Lois Lane finds it all rather funny and rather childish. This is how Superman the movie addresses that theme of cynicism. This is how Lois Lane acts as an audience surrogate. But we then have that moment of that Peter Pan-like fantasy where Superman and Lois Lane fly together, and she goes from gripping him hard, not wanting to look down. And in this scene, they symbolize her cynicism kind of washing away through the simple display of what her hand is doing. She goes from gripping onto Superman's chest for dear life with both arms to suddenly only holding onto his hand, and we see her fingers slip and slip and slip. And just like that, she's a part of that fantasy. She's a part of that flight. She lets go and yeah, she falls. She's not Superman, for fuck's sake. But then of course Superman does what he always does and he saves her. And after that she has a date with Clark Kent, Superman's alter ego, where we really show how Clark Kent can make a person believe that he's not Superman just by changing his whole composure, his whole attitude, putting on glasses. People tend to scoff at the whole, oh, he just puts on glasses and people don't recognize him. But this film puts that to bed perfectly. And it is a testament to Christopher Reeve's acting ability. But of course, what would a Superman movie be without a villain? And fortunately, this is not just some moustache-twirling guy that wants to just kill Superman. He too has rhyme and reason. There is a lot of parallel between Superman and Lex Luthor in this movie. Both Superman and Lex Luthor have big ideas, and the two of them have their own versions of power, as well as their own colourful outfits. In the case of Superman, his big idea is to protect humanity. He wants to be a beacon of virtue and selflessness. That's what he wants to use his superpowers for. And his costume is to inspire. In the case of Lex Luthor, he does have power in his own way, his money and his resourcefulness. But he wants to use that to serve himself and his own ego, by destroying the West Coast and reshaping it in his image to sell expensive real estate, with no regard for who he's going to kill. And he dresses in fancy outfits and wigs as a means of overcompensating. Lex Luthor is the antithesis to Superman. He's a man that sees power in Superman and wants to go to Superman and rub his own power in his face. There is the difference between malicious hubris and selflessness, a beacon of virtue and a beacon of vice. As well as that, they all have their own little group dynamic as well that mirrors each other. We've got Superman, Lois Lane, and Jimmy Olsen, who is Superman's plucky friend. That carries over to Lex Luthor, who has Otis, his plucky but incompetent friend, and Miss Tessmacher, who Lex Luthor is anything but charming to. Lex Luthor has no regard for their well-being, where Superman will protect Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen to the death. And of course, with Lex launching the missiles to destroy the West Coast, that sets the stakes so that Superman can save the day, and it all feels earned. Now, of course, there is the question, can Superman save everyone? This is a question that a lot of modern comic book movies tend to ask. Can a superhero save everyone? And the answer is proven no when Lois Lane dies in the San Andreas fault line, and Superman does not arrive on time to save her. But then, just when all seems lost, he finds a way to turn back time and save her, because Superman always finds a way. There is always a way. Now yes, I'm aware that it's contrived that flying around the Earth and making it spin backwards would turn back time to bring back Lois Lane. But I am not so pedantic, I am not so dead inside to let a little bit of a stretch like that take away from what this scene means and represents, and take away from what the film has achieved. I am watching the film on its own terms, and while it is a grounded one, it is still a fantasy film. And since there's never been anything fly around the world turning it backwards and turning back time in real life, against scientific judgment, I'm not gonna rule it out. I mean, stranger things have happened. But when all is said and done, Superman the movie had a lot to prove. It had to prove that superheroes can be convincing and believable for adult audiences on the big screen, and boy did it succeed at that. Superman the movie enabled directors like Sam Raimi, Christopher Nolan, the Russo brothers to make comic book movies that could be taken seriously. Superman the movie gave way to that new wave of action movie entertainment, thus changing the Hollywood landscape forever. Today, superhero movies are one of the biggest draws for cinema, so without Superman the movie, things could be looking very different for the film industry today, which is how Superman 1978 saved cinema. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but some of the shots used in this video look extra glossy. Perhaps just a little bit more polished than you remember? That's because I took them from Superman the Final Cut, a fan-made remaster of Superman the movie made as a tribute to the cast and crew. A labor of love by Catherine Ross. And honestly, I've seen it the whole way through, and this film has never looked better. So there'll be a link to their Facebook page in the pinned comment. Well, now I hand it over to you, fellow home dogs. What do you guys think? And if you did enjoy this video, might I ask you a favor? Please hit subscribe and that notification bell as your way of telling YouTube keep it coming. Likes are also highly appreciated. Now, I'm always trying to make my content better and more consistent, but this does come at a financial cost. And ad revenue isn't always going to cover putting a roof over my head and covering the subscription fees for the software I use to make these videos. So if you really enjoy this content and you feel like lending lending me a hand by any chance, I would be so grateful if you would consider joining my Patreon, which will also give you access to the Channel Pup official Discord server. I also have a written blog called Dr. Blogtopus over on channelpup.net. That is where I put my more critical and analytical stuff. And in the description below are links to different social media platforms where you're more than welcome to come and interact with me. So that's it for today, fellow home dogs. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on another video.